All right. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for getting on. I expect a large group tonight. It's a pretty popular topic. We're a little late in the fiscal year to get it started, but um, we're really grateful that Mr. Flack could be with us. Uh, just a note from our sponsor. FESA sponsors these Thursday night trainings. We're very grateful for their support and what they do for us in national conventions. So if you um, at the end, if you watch the video on YouTube, at the end there'll be a link for you to click to go see all the great things that FESA does for us. But um, uh, NPA for FY24, there's a lot of changes. This is going to be a training. I asked Don to concentrate mostly on CRDO, but there are some overall changes to the way the scorecards are going to look. Although I'm sure you've all looked at your scorecard from October already. This is not the time to question the program or complain about the way that we have it. We should have something else. This is the time for us to get to understand how NPA gets put together, what goals are, how we can affect those goals in our units, how hopefully the changes that Don and I influenced on the team this year, and we got changes will help most people in the field to have at least to have more control over their score. Um, uh, Don is the um, put too fine a point on it. He's the data guy. He puts all that stuff together and says, and then he runs the numbers and does all the and it's it usually comes out pretty close. When he gives me an estimate on where we're at, it's usually pretty close. You guys have already seen him at national convention. He comes almost every year. I think I saw you, Don, 5 or 6 times last year at chapter conventions, and you're at the Atlantic area conference. So we really appreciate your help with this. And without much further ado, I'm going to ask one of the hardest jobs of being president is probably going to ask Don Flak to keep it to about 45 minutes when he's talking about NPA. But I'd like to fit some questions in at the end if we can, and we don't want to keep people much more than an hour. But
Yeah,
with that, Don, the floor is yours, and thanks again.
I appreciate it, and Edmund knows. Edmund and Dan both know this. We started this process probably 9 months ago. We had some of the first iterations of data and targets and scaling as early as August of last year. A lot of different things came together or didn't come together to allow it to get released until just this week, actually. But I will run through real quickly what, a high level. What I want to make sure we touched on is the pay scale changed at the end of last year. And we know that it went to 3% at cell 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, as shown on the screen. And I want to confirm that this will be the pay scale for FY24 as well. So the same scale that we changed to at the end of FY23 is in place for FY24. So if you get to that target cell 5, you're going to get a 5% increase, just like last year. And I have confirmed that with compensation. So I know that's good to go at this point. I do want to just real quickly make sure we all know where we finished in 23. Unfortunately, we did have 181 scorecards that finished out of the money, and that impacted about 298 people. However, this was based on the mitigated scorecards. We actually did some after the fact mitigations and moved another 80 or 85 people into the money. And those changes were made directly in their they were literally changed in PES, not on the NPA scorecard. So we really had about 200 people finish out of the money for the year. And I'm determined that we don't have that repeat. I want everybody in the money, and certainly the higher in the money. Kind of a bright spot, we did have 23 people get an 8% raise this year. Earn an 8% raise. You think back just a couple years that when we were on a 15-point scale, this would really be like getting a 12, 13, uncharted territory. So very happy with that overall. I do want to spend most of my time speaking about 24, and it says preview, but it's here, folks. The significant changes we made. And some of these, even if you looked at your October scorecard, you don't notice it yet. The very first one is we converted functional effectiveness from a weighted index to a scorecard. Unfortunately, if you look at the first iterations of the scorecards that came out from October, it still looks like a weighted index. That will change probably in the next 30 days or so. Unfortunately, NPA could not start programming the system until after mitigations concluded. So there will be some change in the look of the scorecard, and it will take away the rounding impact of functional effectiveness. Right now, if you're at, say, a 4.5 in points, it rounds up to a cell 5, and then they cut it in half, and it adds 2.5 to your composite. On the same token, if you were at a 4.48, they round you down to a 4, and they don't give you that extra 0.24 that you would have earned. We are taking that away, and I'll, the idea is when you see your new scorecard, when it fully publishes, the weight is the weight, and you won't have to guess. You won't have to sit and do math to figure out how much something's impacting you. I'll get into your functional effectiveness a little bit more, but competitive products, that's your package business, folks. We have changed the makeup of what that indicator was. That indicator was priority mail, it was first class packages, it was retail ground, and it was parcel select DDU. As you know, we got rid of retail ground and first class packages at the beginning of Q4. We instituted ground advantage. So competitive will be priority mail, ground advantage, parcel select DDU, but it will also include priority mail returns, ground advantage returns, parcel select SCF, and parcel select NDC. We have 3 types of parcel select. DDU dropped at the delivery unit. SCF dropped at your local plant for delivery within that 3-digit zip code, and NDC, which is dropped anywhere in the network for delivery at your local post office. All 3 of those parcel selects are being counted. Priority and priority returns, parcel ground advantage and ground advantage returns. The Postmaster General has been real clear. We're going to own the package market. Part of that market is the return business. We are not performing well enough to earn that business. We were performing in the high 70s, low 80s last year for priority and ground advantage returns. That's why it's been included, but we also turned the target down slightly. When you bring in lower performing product, it brings the overall scores down. We turned the target down. So we should be in good shape there. Employee utilization index is eliminated. In fact, almost all of the weighted indexes are eliminated. Why did we eliminate them? Well, because you have indexes. When we have a weighted index like employee utilization, it was 13% of your overall scorecard. But it was made up of 3 components: employee separation rate, employee availability, and grievance management. Each of those were 30 or 40% of that 13. So it was somewhere between 3.9 and 5.2% of your scorecard. But you'd have to do a math problem to try to figure that out. We got rid of that. We made grievances a flat number on your scorecard, and I'll show you that here in a second. But grievances, we did make one change. Step 3B will count actual cases, not percent of improvement, but actual cases. And that was simply because of the activity that we saw in a couple places in the country made that virtually impossible. And there would be no way to achieve a target, the target cell, let alone a cell 10, if we left it at percentage. There was a proposal, and if you've heard me talk anytime in the last 4 or 5 months, there was a proposal to change the weighting of the components of grievances. That did not carry through. So it's going to be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 step, 1/3 cases pending, 1/3 cost. Employee separation rate has been moved from baseline to SPLY. So we're asking you to improve on what you did last year, not some hypothetical figure from 3 years ago, but what you actually did last year. We're asking you to get a little bit better from there. Scanning visibility and employee availability were both moved off of the base scorecard, both off the base scorecard, and moved to the new functional effectiveness scorecard. The good part is both of those were already being measured at your post office level. So those were already items that you had a lot of direct control of, and it made more sense to have it as part of functional effectiveness. Employee availability, the other change we made in that metric is we have functional specific targets. So if you're in CPDO, you will have a different target than in CRDO. It's based on historical usage within your ELT function. The old target really was defective because it combined the entire company and didn't set, it really wasn't appropriate for many parts of the company. So the new functional specific targets are in place. Then we added a total of 10 metrics this year. The only one for the CRDO people on, or the retail and delivery people on, the only one that will impact you out of those is the last mile package performance. All of the rest of them, as you can see, are either CHRO, fleet, CLO. But if you're in, for instance, if you're in processing and distribution, network division performance is going to be included. Those are all of the major changes for FY24. We look at the scorecards. We had 32 scorecards last year. We have 32 this year, the exact same scorecards we had. So no change in the scorecards. They are vertically and horizontally aligned. If you're in a level 18 post office, or a 20 or 21, 22, an MPU at the district, at the area, you're all working on the exact same metrics, and you're all chasing the exact same thing. That was some changes we made a couple years ago. It's working well, so we've kept that in place. This is what your scorecard is going to be composed of for FY24. Controllable income, total revenue, total operating expense, or work hours to plan. If you're an 18 or below postmaster, it's going to be work hours to plan, just like it has been. If you're above an 18 post office, 20 or above, it's going to be TOE. Either one of those are 5.5%. Note that we turned down the weight of both TOE, work hours, and total revenue. Both of those we knew FY24 was going to be a challenge. The plans in place are challenging, going to take work to achieve, and our revenue plan is very aggressive. Those impacted, if you look back at your scorecards last year, you saw revenue finished at a 2. If it's going to negatively impact you, and we saw that there may be a potential for that, if it's going to negatively impact you, we wanted the weight of it to be less. So we made it lower weighted. Instead of 7.5%, it's only 5.5%. Still have market dominant, competitive. We have customer experience, total accidents, employee separation rate, and grievance and backlog cost reduction. If you add all of these up, it's 50%. It's half your scorecard. Real simply, 10% of your scorecard is controllable income. 10% you can earn 10 points. 10% of that is 1. You can earn 1 point from controllable income. You can earn about half a point from total revenue, half a point from TOE or work hours, etc. We look at your functional effectiveness scorecard, the right side of your scorecard. It will also be half of your scorecard. F2DPH, the same indicator you had last year, will return at 10%. CSV or SOV, same indicator you've had for 3 or 4 years now, will return. Scanning visibility at 5%, employee separation at 5%, employee availability at 5%. And yes, this employee separation is the same employee separation you see over here. So it's 5% on the left side, 5% on the right side. Put them together, it's 10% total. I begged headquarters to make it 10% and put it in one place. They liked it better on both sides of the scorecard. It's scored the same way. It's going to be the same score in both places. It will just count for 10%. The big one is that last mile package performance. That's your new indicator. Essentially, what it means is if you get a package in your office this morning, and it doesn't matter if it's DDU, Amazon, DHL, FedEx, UPS, or something coming through the network. If you got it in your unit this morning, it gets an out for delivery. Did it get a stop the clock? That's really what it measured. Now, please understand, that doesn't mean that take a Gaylord of packages and push it in the corner and don't put an AAU on it and don't get an out for delivery scan on it. You're going to fail service, you do that. And by the way, we know that those packages are there. So if you try to look good on package performance, on last mile package performance, you're going to hurt yourself much more in other places. But that also represents, so functional effectiveness will be 50% of your scorecard. Base scorecard will be 50%. We'll get both scores, we'll add them together, and that's your score. It'll look something like this. Right now, if you look in NPA and you pulled up your scorecard, every one of these weights on the right side is doubled. That's because they're still showing it as a weighted index. The only way they can come up with 50% of the scorecard, as they're reprogramming the system, is all they're doing. But until that occurs, the only way they can do it is show everything at double, add it all up, and then they cut it in half. The problem with that is it causes rounding. If you round up, it helps you, but if you round down, it hurts you. And we saw far too many people that finished that like a 4.48 composite, and their functional effectiveness was a 4.4 or a 5.4, and it rounded down. And had it not rounded down, they would have gone over, that would have added more points to the composite, and their score would have been higher, and they would have gone to the next cell. But October published with the old format. November and December both are probably going to publish under the old format. And then we'll get the system will get reprogrammed and you will start seeing it in the proper format. But you see a weight, that's how much of your scorecard it is. We're going to take both sides, add them together. You see here, we get a base scorecards. We're going to get a functional effectiveness scorecard. We add them together. If your unit's eligible for a modification factor, we'll add that in and you get your bottom line score. I won't spend a lot of time on scaling, but I will. What I want to tell you, make sure, and one, we have a defined set of written rules that we follow, and we're certainly willing to share them with folks. But what it basically says is we've taken a lot of time, effort, and energy to make sure, one, that cell 1 is reasonable, cell 10 is achievable. That's the big part here. Cell 10 is achievable. So I'm looking to make sure people are able to get to cell 10 on any individual metric. The key is if you can get to a 10 on every metric, your entire scorecard can get to a 10. And that's really what I'm focused on. Then the other item is making sure we have a reasonable target. So your base scorecard, controllable income, our target for FY23, that understand what that target means. Minus 0.75 means, hey, if we do everything right and we make our work hour plan, we make our expense plan, we only spend as much money as we hope to, and we bring in all the money we hope to, we'll only lose $750 million this year on a controllable basis. That's before workers' comp and and retiree benefits and those types of things. But think about that. That's what we're considering a successful year, is we only lose 750 million. Total revenue, pretty simple. Target is to make the plan. Total operating expense, same thing, simply make the plan. And the same with work hours in a level 18 post office. All you have to do is make the plan. Market dominant service, the target last year was 9308. We finished about 9318. The target this year is 9308. So went from 93.00 to 9308, less than we achieved last year. We understand as we're rolling out new RPDCs, LPCs, and SDCs that we're going to take some short-term hits in service. Because of that, we didn't want to make the target as high as we demonstrated last year. We wanted to move it up from where we were last year, but not as high as we actually achieved. So this is one of those oddities where the target's actually lower than what we did last year. And the same with competitive products. Last year, we made the target of 95.75. The target this year has been moved down to 95.55. The big difference here is we added the returns, priority returns, ground advantage returns. Those were lower performing numbers. When we added those in, it brought the data down. We brought the target down. If you happen to work in a mail processing or logistics environment, your target will be different. It's 91.19, I believe it is. It will be all 7 of these products except Parcel Select DDU. We do not count Parcel Select DDU in mail processing and logistics because those products shouldn't be in a plant. They are dropped directly at the delivery unit, should never get to a plant. Customer experience, you'll see C360, the rate target went up a little bit. That's because our performance went up last year. Still nowhere near the 55 or 60s that we've had in the years past. 46, very doable number. The delivery target stayed the same at 80.94. The POS target stayed the same at 87.46. Everything else was tinkered with. The BSN stayed the same, but .com went up a little bit. Customer Care Center went up a little bit. Total accidents, the target stayed the same, 1425, a target that we made nationally, and the improvement stayed the same. Employee separation rate, again, we moved from the baseline, which was COVID period, to SPLY, which is FY23, and the goal here is to improve by 8.5% to what you did last year. This is measured at the district level. And again, we're only counting 9 NOA or notice of action codes: resignation, military, all other, separation transfer, separation declined relocation, declined assignment, disability, termination during probation, termination non-career, and separation involuntary.
So Don, again, I'm just going to stop you for just a second, because one of the questions in the chat was declination and local services not being able to cancel the 50. So I guess before they go to orientation, is that?
So if the employee never goes to orientation, even if a 50 was cut, if they never were paid a work hour, they won't count against you.
Okay.
I believe that was on the last slide too.
Okay.
Yeah, it should have been, but
blew past that last slide. I couldn't read that fast.
Well, also understand employees that are pre-careers, separated for service breaks or separated for peak, things like peak, those types of things don't count. So we bring somebody on for peak, we let them go in January, doesn't count against us. We separate them after their term of service and they have to have a break in service, doesn't count against us. Also, an important one, and I've heard this, as Edmund said, I'm out and about quite often. If an employee was separated and they come back and they're separated again, it only counts once. If they're separated 5 times and they come back and they're on the rolls, they don't count at all. We're looking at the last action. So if they're on the rolls, they can't be a separation, even if they were separated 4 or 5 times. They're counted once. We count them by EIN. So somebody's concerned, hey, they left the job as an RCA and went and got a job as a PSE. Well, they're still with us. They're still count. They're on the rolls. Don't count as a separation. Grievance and backlog and cost reduction. Again, there was a proposal to change this. And in fact, I just see that my slide still is wrong. So I will change that. It's not 20, 35, and 40. That's what the proposal was. We thought it was going through. It's not. It's going to be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. They're counted evenly. So step 2A or 3B, 2A counts from the district down. 3B is area. Oh, I don't know what I did here. 3B is the area and up. So area, regional, and headquarters. And cases pending, and then cost reduction. They'll be even 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Note that 3B used to have a target of 1.50. That was a percentage target. Now this is an actual hard number of cases. Now that's the left side of your scorecard. The right side of your scorecard, functional effectiveness, F2 DPH. The target is 1/2 of 1%. That's 0.5, 1/2 of 1%. Essentially, if you absorb growth, use the exact same number of work hours you used last year, as long as your package volume stays the same, you'll make the target. If you show any improvement at all, and quite frankly, we performed pretty well in this one. The formula is fairly straightforward. There is a package adjustment. So if your packages are falling, you have less package delivered this year than last year. The idea is that you'll have spent less hours doing that, and your hours should fall. If your packages went up, we make that adjustment. We go back and add hours to last year at a minute per package and say, hey, if you had an extra 10,000 packages this year, we add 10,000 minutes to last year. We recalculate what your score would have been with those extra 10,000 minutes, and we compare what you did do to what you would have done with those extra packages. One change that we made at the end of last year, and it's included this year, is if you get Sunday delivery, we have developed a method to give you credit for unique deliveries on Sunday. So what I mean by unique deliveries, you go out and you deliver 5 packages to one household, that's one delivery. It's just as if you were giving them 5 letters. One delivery counts once. Doesn't matter how many packages we're delivering. But we're going to be able to count unique deliveries on a Sunday, give you credit for those as deliveries. Here's an example, and I'll share the deck with Edmund and Dan so that they can distribute it. But essentially, here's the calculation from last year. You get total deliveries of 10,350, 110 hours came out at 9,409. This year, we do an extra couple hundred deliveries, took an extra 3 hours, but we added an extra 360 packages we delivered. We convert those packages to hours. We go back and say last year you wouldn't have used 110. You would have used 116. Your rate last year would have been 89.22 with those extra packages. And this year with them, it's 93. And your score is actually a positive score, 0.46, 464 instead of a negative. One thing this is an example I like to show. This is a real life example, folks. I didn't make this one up. Look at their scorecard from last year, 7.12 composite score, very good score, very well run unit. Understand this was a big delivery unit, okay? 50 carrier routes. They did 6.6 million deliveries for the year, and they got an overall score of plus 310 in F2 DPH. But when we went through the unit, we're able to find 13 missing deliveries. Not 13 routes, but 13 deliveries not being counted. That's one missing delivery on every 4 routes. If you have 4 routes in your office, could I walk in and find one missing delivery? If I can, this is important to you. This particular unit, they missed 13 deliveries for the year. Because we count that delivery every day of the year, that's 3,900 missing deliveries out of over 6.6 million. However, when we go back and add those deliveries in, their F2 DPH score, instead of being 3.1, would have been 3.2. Because that would have caused their FE score to go up from a cell 7 to a cell 8, it also would have caused their composite to go from a 7.12 to a 7.52. So those folks got a 7% raise last year. But if they'd have counted those extra 13 deliveries all year, they would have gotten an 8% raise. I'm just saying, one missing delivery in 4 routes can have a huge impact in how much you make going forward. We did a quick review of the delivery units. We have one route, and I hate to say I'm not making this up, but we have a route that the Red Book hasn't had a change made in more than 4,900 days. Okay? That's over 13 years. I don't care, folks. That isn't right. There is no possibility that that route Red Book is correct. Guess what? It's been turned in every month. There just hasn't been any changes made. So if they're doing a paper exercise, they're doing you a disservice. You're not getting paid for the work they're doing. We've got over 32, we got 32 routes in 16 districts that have been more than 2,000 days without a change. And we've got 577 routes across 38 districts with more than 1,000 days since a change. That's almost 3 years, folks. The likelihood of that route not adding a delivery or changing a delivery for 3 years, probably not realistic. I can tell you, if you're in one of the 12 districts I'm showing on the screen, you don't have to worry. Your routes aren't 1,000 days old. If you're in any of the other 38 districts, you may have a route that's more than 1,000 days old. And if you have a question, contact your AMS people. They can tell you. They also are sending out reports showing where we're doing deliveries in addresses that aren't in your Red Book. Pay attention to those. That's your money. That's where that will get you paid in F2 DPH. CSV SOV. The only change we made here, it is the best scoring metric in the company by far. Over 40% of all scorecards in a cell 10. Typically what happens is you score real well and we turn the targets up, we make it much harder. We didn't do that. We left the targets basically where they were. The only difference was cell 5 last year on the improvement part of it was 1998. It was 20%. It was 0.02 of a point away from 20%. We just made it 20% so we weren't playing with all those weird decimals. I went back and looked to see how many people were impacted by that 2 decimal point change, that 0.02 of a point change. It was exactly 0. So it impacted nobody, but we just made it easy counting numbers. Essentially what we're counting is, for the improvement side of it, real simple. How big of a gap to 100 do you have? In this case, from 90 to 100 is a gap of 10. You finish the year at 92, your gap goes from 10 down to 8. You captured 2% of it, or 2 points out of the 10. 2 out of 10 is 20%. That's a cell 5. However, if your CSV or SOV score is already over 100, you just get a cell 10. Keep it over 100, you get a cell 10. Last mile package performance, the target's 99.05. And quite frankly, the scores we're seeing, I mean, you're doing 99.7 in parcel select, which is essentially the same thing. You get it in this morning, you get it delivered today. And we're seeing real strong scores coming out early on. Scanning, no change from last year. AAU, ADE, bundle visibility distributed, and parcel return. The same 4 scans that we looked for last year, we're looking for this year. Sorry, this says TBD. It's the same target. I wish I could take it away real quick. It's the same target. So don't worry about that. No change. 99.30. Employee separation rate, again, 8.5%. I show it in here again because it's already been in. It's that one that's on both sides of your scorecard. It counts twice. Employee availability. Target's a little higher than last year. It was 92.52 last year. You guys did, in most cases, better than 92.52. Most of you were in the 93s and 94s. This is a functional specific target, however. So it is different in retail and delivery than it is in mail processing or logistics, but expect to do real strong. And through November, oh, I'm not supposed to tell you this. November will publish in the next day or two. And through November, this is where our scorecards stand around the country. 84% of you guys are over target. We do have 24 scorecards currently in a non-pay status, but we also have 87 of them in a cell 8. So I've actually got more in a cell 8 than I do in a non-pay. And when you consider, here's the tipping point with 84% of everybody well above target for November. I do expect November may publish as early as tomorrow. The idea is we got October out, we loaded November, going to get sign off on that, get it published, and then immediately turn around and load December and get it published. Our typical target would be, if everything worked on time, we would have been publishing October or December last week. We didn't hit that target, but I believe we should be able to get it out next week. And by the end of the month, we should publish January and be right on schedule with the normal published schedule.
Remind me next year in the meetings to make sure that's on your NPA, getting the scorecards out on your end.
Believe me, Edmund, you absolutely know that I'm trying to push these numbers out.
And if we'd known that these changes would have, we just had to hurry that process along. So we all made mistakes in there.
Yeah, and actually, Edmund, that's all of my slides. I got that done in 34 minutes.
Yep, under target for sure. So there's been some questions in the chat. I'm going to go through those, and then we're going to open it up if you don't mind. I talked about, somebody asked about rounding before, when it was 40% and 60%. Used to round on the left side and come over, and that's not going to happen anymore.
Well, and we rounded. We also rounded all of those weighted indexes.
Correct.
Employee utilization used to round, functional effectiveness. All of the rounding will go away, with the exception of customer experience, which is still an index, and grievance management, which is still an index.
Right. But then a 4.64 will still give you a 5, cell 5 for your NPA.
Absolutely. 4.50 will give you a 5. So we will still round the bottom end number.
I answered some of these in the chat. I just want to make sure I'm correct. Flex plan adjustment factors into TOE. Amy asked that question. I think she's talking about hours flexed in and out based on, it used to happen a lot more. It doesn't happen quite as much anymore.
Well, and we're hearing that the tempo of last year, which was very few flexes, was going to continue this year. But that being said, if there is a flex done up or down, yes, it will impact TOE.
Makes your TOE, right. And it's always done that. Generally, hours come from money, right? So they they project how much money they think they're going to make at the beginning of the year. They magically divide that into hours. They spread that out to the field. If they don't, the revenue isn't there, then the hours have to come down and they get spread out to the field. So that will. We're seeing mail coming into our office weeks after it's been canceled. How is this going to affect my NPA? That's your general scorecard. That's as long as you're clearing it every day, you should be okay. But it will affect.
I will be completely transparent. Your two primary service indicators, market dominant and competitive, are scored at the district level. And if the piece fails, it doesn't look at where it failed. It looks at, did it fail? So if it came in DOA, it's already missed its service target, it's going to count against the office. There's absolutely no way to prevent that. However, the biggest parts of it are within, when you look at market dominant, competitive products, about half that volume is parcel select DDU. So you own the biggest part of over half of that volume. You get it in this morning, you get it out today, you're helping yourself. The same with the 15% last mile package performance. So you do own those two. Yes, market dominant and competitive can hurt you if it's coming in DOA, but it's hurting everybody in your district or everybody in your state. And unfortunately, that's the customer's experience.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's a good measurement of what we do. And, I suppose it should be measured. It is going to be an interesting year, though, with things like what's going on in Houston currently and SNDCs and LPCs and what have you. But we've seen adjustments, mitigation for that too. So
yes.
here's a great question for you. Who do we contact when we see a significant discrepancy in the data validation for NPA?
My contact information's on the screen. If you aren't able to get resolved locally through local channels or the resources you have, feel free to reach out to me and give me as much information as you can. Please don't contact me and say this is wrong and expect me to go figure out what's wrong. Point me to what you're saying is wrong and why you believe. Give me the documentation you have that indicates it's wrong. We have, I work tirelessly to try to help get things corrected, resolve things, and typically what I do is I will reach out to the subject matter experts to get a resolve.
Yeah, and that NPA help desk is pretty good too. If you call them, they generally respond with questions too. But Don has helped in a lot of instances, especially because here's the deal: if it's wrong, like we're measuring something incorrectly, we need to know. I mean, it's good for everybody to catch that. Non-delivery offices are DBH percent to supply. It's the same for non-delivery offices. We just don't score that, and they get the weights are heavier on the rest of the scorecard for them.
If you're a non-delivery office and you're getting a score of 0 for DPH, please do not sit there all year and not say something. You have to raise the issue so that we can ensure that you're on the exception list and you don't get because if you don't say anything and you're getting a 0 month after month, they have somebody in one of the data systems has something that makes them believe you're a delivery office. And that's why you're getting a score. It's just a score of 0.
And we're about to have February implementations. We got June implementations and September implementations where offices that have function 2 today will no longer have function 2. So that in those offices, it'll be really important. I know Don fixed all those problems from last year, and I'm sure we'll do that again. But that's an example where you could have an indicator that you're not supposed to have. So that's a great point. If you are in a non-delivery office, you only have PO box delivery, and you see it on your scorecard, it's time to reach out. Employee separations, all employees, and it's all kinds of separations.
Correct.
So it's not just non-career, it's not just quitting, it's resigning, it's retirements, it's all separate.
It does not include retirements.
That's you're correct. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
if they retire, it does not count. I'm sorry, and if they die, if there's a death, does not count. If they're separated for termination or separated or terminated for condition or cause, there's a number of those that are out there. None of those will count.
Your deliveries on your DPH, the red books, it's great advice to keep your red books up for all routes, but obviously it makes more on your NPA on the city side than it does the rural. But function 2 is function 2. So, all the red books, all the routes are counted. Employee availability. Can you expound a little bit on, I don't know if you want to go back to that slide on employee availability?
No, I went too far. Sorry. So employee availability is basically, and I see we need to take this line out of here, but it's in the purest sense of the word, it's unscheduled, unprotected leave that we're measuring. We don't count against you if it's union leave, military leave, OWCP, FMLA. Those aren't counted. What we're looking at is unscheduled, unprotected leave. So sick leave, AWOL, leave WAP, that are not protected or don't fall into one of those categories: OWCP, military, union, and it's simply how many hours were worked divided by how many we expected to be worked. It is a career measurement only, and why is that? Because it's scheduled. Non-careers don't have a set schedule. They are flexible. You can non-schedule them on any given day. So it is career employees only. And literally if they're not showing up, they're taking sick leave and it's unprotected, or leave WAP and emergency annual, it's not protected, and you're not taking action to resolve it, it's going to hurt your availability. But that's the easiest way. It's unprotected, unscheduled.
Hey,
Thank-
Don, can I ask a
Yes.
question? Is wounded warrior leave in that?
I believe that is included with the military, but I will validate and get the answer back to
That's
Ed.
coming up more and more. Everybody that comes back is getting that wounded warrior leave.
Our intention would be to exclude that, but I want to make sure that it's actually in the formula.
I think we've asked that question before, and that's military, but I'm not 100%.
Yeah, I believe that's how we're coding it. So
There's a
yes.
couple of these I think I've got. Flex time in function 4, we've had CSV, SOV, that if they go back and add flex time and it goes back to the beginning of the year, I think the scorecards update, right?
Correct. Well, the scorecards don't update, but the score does.
The score does.
So,
Right.
I mean, we won't go back and change the score that was published
Right.
for October, but on the January or February score, it would be updated.
Okay. Office increases in level, I'm assuming that's a modification factor question. When do we determine the modification factor? On the last day of the fiscal year?
For everybody except post offices, it's the first day of the fiscal year.
Okay.
For post offices, it's the last day of the year.
Okay. So whatever you finish on. So if you're at 21 and you become a 22 halfway through the year, you're going to get the 22 modification at the end of the year.
Correct.
That's-
Correct. And you'll see, they'll publish a new scorecard and the modification factor will be there. But we don't change it for plants, logistics, POOMs. If POOM gets upgraded from a 23 to 25, they get what they had at the beginning of the year.
Yep. This recording will be on YouTube. It'll be on the UPMA YouTube channel probably mid-morning tomorrow.
I had a
Missed
question on
delivery.
the last one, on the upgrade. What if you go from an 18 or 18B up to a 20, where you have different metrics? How's that going to be handled?
It's only for well, for the TOE, you mean? I guess
Yeah,
that's
'cause you're going
you go
from-
from TOE percentage to
Yeah, that's the only going from an 18 to a 20 will cause you to go from work hours to TOE. That's the only change. Everything else is exactly the same.
missed delivery, missing STC, or a delivery that is marked as a no stat that should be active. Yes. So if you are delivering to deliveries that are marked as a no stat, then you're not getting credit for them, and your DPH. It's deliveries per hour. So if your deliveries are not accurate, your delivery per hour is not going to be accurate. So yes.
You're doing free work.
Yep. The 2 mini mail surveys with the F2 DPH, they will hurt you if your routes get longer and they get more hours added to them. If your deliveries don't go up but your hours go up, it's going to hurt you. If your routes are going up because they're having hours added to them or deliveries added to them, it should be a wash. But growth will hurt generally, right? Growth will hurt you a little bit because your hours.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is if you add it and you work it at the same efficiency you were, it's not going to hurt you. But yeah, it's if work hours are added and there aren't deliveries to go with it, it will certainly impact you.
Okay. The grievance metric is, if that's a long, involved thing. Basically, you got to do your job at step 2 and get them on. Once they get above there, that's it's on the left-hand side. That's a national thing. That's on labor, and we get on them all the time. The only good thing I can say about that is they're going to have a better year this year than they had last year. They got to. So,
That's
last
the
mile.
hope.
I did want to touch on this because, with this change with last mile packages in the unit, and I'm going to be monitoring this very closely from up here. The promise was that, historically we've used data for AAU and ADE based on zip code because that's how it's measured. And now if you've got your routes duoed and you get a zip code, your PO box zip code and your route zip code are the same, but you don't do the delivery, somebody else is scanning in that zip code. What we were told was they can measure it down to the machine on the finance number. So if you have 100 packages come in for your PO box and you scan 100 packages and you deliver 99 of them, you're going to get a 99. Even though 1,000 were scanned over in this town over here and they didn't deliver all of them. That shouldn't hurt you because they're going to go to the machine to the finance number. I say that like I believe it's going to be true. Trust but verify. We will verify all that. That data is coming out of EDW, so that's what they tell me. But they assured us in the room that they will be able to measure it at that level. It's been a historical problem with duo offices, so I see the numbers that are coming out on scanning. I gotta believe we're measuring it better than we were. So if it says I'm going to sell to for last mile and I'm in an 18, that's what you need to, everything that you own. If you're scanning at AAU, you got to get an ADE that day. Why do some level 18s have last mile package performance on the scorecard and do not? 18s, again, if you don't have city or rural delivery, the last mile package performance, you got to have PO box. You're going to have it on your scorecard. The only way you wouldn't is if it's been duoed out, but you're going to have to be getting packages in your unit. So I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah, no, the only way would be if they're counting the delivery and the counting all the packages in the duo delivery unit. But as Edmund said, they assured us that they could get to a 9-digit scoring. Yep. Essentially, the PO box is a different 9-digit zip than the rest of it, and be able to isolate and score it. So
we got a headquarters and siloed person on the call talking about the individual NPA for headquarters. I'm not sure that the field that is so complicated a process for the field. They did expand it again this year. We do consult on that. Stand by is all I can say. For those of you that don't know, go ahead, Don. I'm sorry.
Whatever siloed headquartered person is on, hit me up with my contact information and I'll be able to right. share your exact metrics with you.
We won't be sending the recording out, but it will be available. Subscribe at UPMA on YouTube. Okay, when they stop picking up the mail in the PM, how is that going to affect our NPA? So we're talking about I forget the name of it now, but the new process.
Localized collection optimization.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of offices around the country. They're only going to get one drop in the morning. The standards have changed. So as long as we measure to the standards, it should be in them. That it's again, carrying the water for anybody. We understand that that's a change in what we've always done. But hopefully that they get that right and it doesn't affect your score negatively. Overburden routes affect our NPA? I don't think so. Depends on hours. Again, if you're using hours. Our office has highway contract route. So those are not function 2, correct? So
no, they are not. City, not rural, shouldn't be counted. It won't impact.
Right. So even though you should still be doing your red books, you still should be, servicing that customer with that, and making sure those addresses are good so they get the mail they're supposed to get when they're supposed to get it. But you wouldn't have a function 2 DPH scorecard if you just had HCR routes.
Well, and generally, ACR people want their red books right, so they get paid right.
Correct. Correct. So yes, so if you go into the NPA website, the question was, do you have a slide that shows which measures are figured at the office, MPO, and district level? All that information's inside NPA. It's actually one of the better websites that we have. You can pull up a PDF. Don is very insistent that everybody that's a sponsor of a NPA scorecard or section of the NPA has a one-pager that says this is how it's measured. You saw a couple of them. You can get all of that from the NPA website. Yeah, Don's going to send us that presentation, Jimmy. We can post it. Do a situation. Well, hub offices ever get credit for hub routes? I'm not sure what that means. We're working on a lot of things with Amazon hubs, if that's what you're talking about. It's deliveries that come under your finance number. So I have 2 routes that deadhead into other people's RMPOs and deliver. I get credit for those deliveries, not the other deliveries in the office on my DPH. I think that's what they're talking about. And that was the last question, Don, and we did it in 57 minutes.
All right.
I can't thank you enough. It's invaluable. I mean, I know my MPA gets better because I pay attention to this stuff, so I know what we're looking at. The other thing I will say, the relationship we have with Dr. Josh and CRDO with that goofy CRDO scorecard. When it first came out 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago now, when I first saw it, it really bared no relation to NPA, and you could be doing really great on the CRDO scorecard and not have a great NPA. He's really tailored that. If you've been paying attention to that CRDO scorecard and doing well on it, it should transfer over to your NPA in most ways. So that's helped us get through this 4-month delay in getting the goals and everything out. So with that,
Well, he's
go ahead.
integrating better with us as well. He had me in to speak to their group a couple weeks ago. I'm speaking to them again next week. I'm going to speak to them about every 4 to 6 weeks. So they are integrated very well with us at the moment.
Yep. And that, like I say, like if you used to be, you could be, not on his radar at all. That was a pun. And not have a great NPA. I don't think that's possible now. So, with that, I'm going to thank everybody for getting on. We had at peak, I think we had 130 people on here. I know a lot of people are going to watch this, and we're going to have a lot of questions. And Don will be on the circuit this summer, same as I will, and he'll be at National Convention to congratulate us all on our 7s and 8s and 9s that we're getting this year, the way it's headed. So, with that, I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to have another plug for FESA. They spend a lot of money to enable us to do this, and we're appreciative of that. So make sure you contact Nicole and the people at FESA for all your retirement planning needs. And with that, I'm going to thank Don again, and I'm going to say good night. So thanks a lot, Don. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.